Hello, everyone. So in this video today, I'm going to explain the NLP Communications Model. It's probably one of my favorite models that I've been working with over the last few years with my clients and also in a lot of leadership courses and on retreats, etc., etc. And it's an incredibly powerful model to understand yourself better and other people better. So let's get into it. Let's see if we can get this up. Let me see how to do this. There we go. So here we are, the NLP Communications Model. NLP stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Very simply put, what this means is the study of subjectivity. So the study of human subjectivity. How do we humans experience and perceive our environment? Yeah. So this is what we're going to be diving into today through this model. We're going to be starting on the left-hand side. I hope it's left for you as well, but we're going to be starting here with a purple square. External event. External event is anything from a car passing by, people ordering a coffee, two people talking, a tree falling, anything that might be happening externally is the best and simple way that I can put it. Yeah, so anything that's happening outside of you in the external world, if you will. That then gets filtered through three main filters. The meta programs, the filters, and then deletions, distortions, and generalizations. Meta programs are thinking patterns. Each human, all of us, have 120 different thinking patterns. We will be later in the program, you can download a folder somewhere where you can find all the different meta programs and thinking patterns that are there and that we operate in. Yeah, so thinking patterns are it's a very first filter because it's a very first frame that we see reality through. And often this piece is often unconscious to most people. We're often not aware of this piece. So it's going to be really, really useful to bring awareness to these meta programs, to these thinking patterns. What are some of these patterns? So you'll be able to download that document below here as well to get more insight into that for yourself. Yeah. Then the second filter are the filters. So that includes values. So anything that you value. I value honesty, I value integrity, I value good communication, I value equality. Yeah, those are values. Then there's beliefs. Beliefs could be anything from the earth is round to have we actually been to the moon, to I believe that it is important for people to get to know themselves better, to I believe that nature is good for you. I believe that I'm a loving person, whatever it is, right? And I'm no flat earther here, by the way, but just saying, those are all beliefs. Like, how do you know? Is a question, right? So how do you know? So filters are based on values, beliefs, then language. So language obviously is, we're speaking English right now, so that's a language. Well, there's lots of other language. My original language is Dutch. And so we are perceiving reality through the language that we speak. And you might have noticed, and I have noticed it in myself, that when I'm in another country and I adopt the language of that country, my thinking starts to actually shift based on the language I'm speaking, and also therefore thinking in, and my creativity and everything changes. Yeah, so you can say we define ourselves a lot through the language that we speak as well. Yeah, so that's an important piece there as well. And how do we relate to language? How do we relate to certain words? Honesty might mean something completely different to you than to someone else. Or leadership, or integrity might mean something different to you than to someone else. So it's really important as you start to mature as a human to really check in healthy communication with other humans of, when you say X, what do you mean by that? because it's very likely that you hold a different perspective of what that actually means than the other. Yeah, anyway, that's language. Memories. So obviously our memories are an incredibly important filter that we see reality through. So anything that you've been through from the day that you were born up until now, there's all sorts of memories, and there's big memories, so things that we consciously remember, but there's also all sorts of micro memories, if you will, that just layer a filter on top of our reality that influence the way we see life and see the world and how we interact with people. Depending on the quality of our childhood, there's a very big influence on how we relate and operate in the world, and also our leadership styles, our way of thinking, the way we perceive and respond to other people around us. Yeah. Decisions. So how do we make choices? And what do we base those on? Most likely we base those on our values and beliefs and our memories. And how do we know what are, quote unquote, the right choices or not? Yeah, decisions. So what do we base decisions on? Every decision has a ripple effect. If I choose X or Y, what does that mean for the rest of my life, or at least for the upcoming period? And we don't always know, and we can't know, but those are definitely filters that we perceive reality through every decision that we make. And then there's time coding. So time doesn't actually live in reality. There's no time in the world. There is moving and circadian rhythms, etc., and seasons and so on that we've labeled seasons. Language. And then you can have all sorts of beliefs and values around that, if that's a nice season or not so nice season. I really like winter and I really don't like summer, for example. Well, but that doesn't actually exist in reality. It exists within our filters and our minds of reality. So time is a subjective experience. And when I say there's circadian rhythm, so there's what we call day and night, and yeah, the earth is moving and the planets are moving around and the sun is moving, etc., etc. So everything is moving, but there's no time in reality. Time is a human experience. So whether we perceive time to be fast or to be slow, whether we perceive it to be stressful and full of all sorts of things, or really spacious and open, that's an internal experience. It's a subjective experience. And then you maybe have heard of the power of now, and how then really that filter starts to really be seen through more. It's an important piece. If there's no past and no future, what is here now? More on that later. Yeah, so those are the filters. Then we move through deletions, distortions, and generalizations. So deletions are very important, otherwise we will be completely overwhelmed by the external world. There is so much information out there, and I'm not just talking about all the sorts of ads there on social media, or the news that is out there, or simply a busy street in a big city or something. No, I'm already talking about when you're in nature, in the forest, for example. There's a lot of things that are happening, and we're deleting a lot of information, and we need to, in order to function. Yeah, but what also happens in a lot of conversations, in business conversations, or with partners or children, is that we delete the pieces that we either like or don't like, depending on our values and beliefs. So we see a distorted perception, which we actually link back to distortions, but we get a distorted perception of what's actually here in front of us. We get a perception of what we, in a certain sense, think we're seeing as well. And what we are deleting out of reality and attracting in. So it's perception. And that's where distortion comes in. Yeah, so we distort a lot of information, but deletion is more like we're just leaving it out. Distortion is we very much shape it into something different, the information. So someone says something, because we haven't actually checked in with them, or what do they mean with X, Y, Z. we are taking our own filters and beliefs and frames and et cetera, and values, and then place it upon the other person and then think this is probably what they mean. And so we distort a lot through that process. And again, this is a very human process. It needs to happen to some degree, because otherwise we're constantly asking what someone actually means. So there's also such a thing as healthy intuitive knowing, so to speak. And a lot of the time we get it wrong. And it's really important, and that's what this model is also for, is to really see where is the opportunity for more clarity in communication, more clarity within our own system. When we're clearer in ourselves, we're able to show up more clearly, and we're able to be a more clear mirror back to the people around us. Which is ultimately what it, in my belief, about when we talk about what does it mean to be a conscious leader or conscious human in this world, is to operate with awareness, self-awareness. Yeah, and this is a really big piece of how self-aware are we of these pieces in ourselves. And then there's so that's a really nice way of like, why is this important? Yeah. Generalization. So generalizations is where we plunk things together and make it big, to generalize, to make it simple. Yeah, in our own minds. Again, we need that, otherwise we will be overwhelmed with all the little bits of data and information here and there. But an example of a generalization, you can hear it a lot in language as well, which is everyone is happy today. Well, everyone? Probably not. I'm all the time very busy. No one at school likes me. Well, no one. No, actually only Piche and Maria. Okay, well that's all of a sudden a way less heavy then. Yeah, so a lot of kids do this, but a lot of adults do this as well. So words like always, all the time, never, everyone, nobody, all English people, all Europeans, all Australians. What else is an example? Everything, everywhere. Yeah, those are all generalizations. So we clunk things together, simplify it, make it bigger than what it actually is. The whole year has been shit. The whole year has been stressful. The whole year. So every second of every minute, of every hour, of every day, of every week has been stressful. Most likely not. Yeah. So this is where we can actually, by really seeing this for ourselves more clearly, where are we deleting, distorting, and generalizing? Where can we be aware of that at this point? Where can we create a bit more spaciousness and lightness for ourselves? Yeah, it's quite heavy if we see it that way, that the whole year was stressful, for example. Yeah. So that's the opportunity available from this particular piece. There's much more to it, but that's for now the basics that you need to know. Then from these three main filters, we go to the movie mind. And the movie mind is where we have a representational movie in our minds, literally a movie. For some people, it shows up as a visual. So people literally see visuals. For some people, it's more auditory digital, which is more voice in mind. And for some people, it's more kinesthetic, which is a little bit more in the body. But often it's a combination of all three. It just might be that one of those is a little bit more heightened for you than the other. So that's also a really good piece of awareness. Which one is more heightened for you? And how do you know? Yeah, anyway, there comes a movie mind, and that creates a state of mind. When a movie is repeated often enough, we get into a state of mind. And a state of mind is a state. So it's static. Yeah, which means we're more in it. We're more statically in it. Well, actually, if you look at the external environment is constantly changing. So if we're responding more appropriately to the environment and have a fluid, flexible system, we're not really in a state anymore, in the sense of like we can just flow with what's happening, which is kind of what I was referring to earlier, which is the power of now. Are we responding to the moment, or are we responding to a representation in our own mind of the moment, which doesn't mean we're responding to the moment anymore. We're actually responding to the past. Yeah. So, fun little question before we move on. From all the bits and pieces and bytes of data in external reality, there are 2 to 200 million bits of information in external reality, 2 to 200 million bits. From those 2 to 200 million bits of information, so pieces of the puzzle, yeah, bits of information, do you think you can hold with your conscious working mind, which is the movie mind here, per second? If you need to pause this video for a moment and just write down a number. Write down a number, what you think it is. So pause this video for a moment and write that number down. Fun little game. Okay, if you've got your number, it's 5 to 7 bits of information that we can hold per second from the 2 to 200 million bits of information that are actually out there. It is actually a miracle that we get to operate as humans in a somewhat decent, appropriate way with one another. That we all sit in a classroom and actually listen to the teacher, that we all go to work, etc., which is patterns. It's habits and it's patterns, and it's actually a miracle that happens if you consider this idea. And then consider all of the 120 meta programs, thinking patterns, all of the different filters that are present, and all of the different deletions, distortions, and generalizations that shape someone's reality. And this also really clearly shows us that 2 or 3 or multiple people could look at the same situation out there and could have a completely different experience of what that actually is. Completely different. Well, that's because of this. The external environment hasn't changed. It's how people interpret and experience that. And through this coaching program, self-awareness is a really big pillar, which is the pillar that we're in now. This self-awareness piece will provide you with the clarity. How can you then operate differently? But first, we're not just going to go, how can I operate differently? No, what's actually happening right now, currently? So as you see this model, write some notes for yourself down and start to question, really healthily question, hey, what's going on? What are my beliefs and values actually? And how am I actually applying that and constantly filtering reality through that? And again, it's not just, we're going to actually go through a goal setting process and a value setting process. And it's not to say don't have values. It's not to say any of that. It's to say have them, but hold them very loosely, because they shape your reality. And if someone does the opposite of what you value, this is where we often get triggered. If you value open communication and someone is not communicating, for example, this is where we get triggered. If you value trust and someone is not being trusting, shows behavior that gives you a sense of not feeling trusted in that person, you're going to be triggered or feel destabilized. Yeah, so this is where we can have the values. You can absolutely have values. I have values. I work with values because I think it gives direction, and it does. It obviously does give direction, but it's also really important to know that it's something that's made up in our own minds, and it's not actually living in the world. And it also doesn't mean that everyone else has the same values, which is really important to know, so that we can stay fluid and flexible and open for other perspectives in the world. Yeah. Let's move on. State of mind is a more static state where we kind of like a little bit stuck in a particular state, which again, there's no good or bad. It could be really helpful, could also be not so helpful. So you might hear me say that a lot in this process. I'm not talking about what is good or what is bad. Good and bad doesn't exist fundamentally. It's really, is it useful for you or not? Is it helpful? Does it support you in life? If it does, great. Perfect. If it doesn't, well, maybe there's something that we can shift or let go of or integrate, whatever needs to happen. Yeah, so those are is it useful? Amazing, engaging. Is it not? Let's look at it a bit more deeply. Yeah, so from the state of mind, we go into the body. Yeah, the body, the soma. This comes back to the journaling process as well. How is the soma responding to to this state of mind. So what's happening in the body? All of this happens in a split second, like that. And how is the soma now interacting with that? Yeah, and then from there we go into in other modalities, just before we move on, in other modalities there are theories that the body responds before the mind, and that's true to some degree as well. We are now particularly speaking to the filters of mind. Yeah, there is a process that happens on a more, let's say, instinctual level, that's really primal, where the body actually responds before the mind. Yeah, what we are now looking at is the mind, including the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious mind is what we're looking at here as well, which is a very fast and quick process, but it's not quicker than, let's say, primal, a primal thing happening, even though we could say that is the same as the subconscious. Yeah, so there's different theories around it, different ideas about it. This really works to bring clarity. This is also just a model. It's not reality itself. It's a model. We use it because it's useful and it provides us with clarity. It's not the be-all and end all, and it's definitely not a belief system, because then we would end up with belief system, which is what we don't want per se. It's not a religion of some sort or some sort of idea that you want to adopt. So anything that we be teaching, the question that comes back to you constantly is, well, is this true for you? And if so, how? And how do you know? Yeah, so it's an active inquiry process for you. Well, how does this relate to your reality? Test this in your world. Test how this is working for you or not working, depending on the filters and the quality of the thoughts that are there. So move on from there. We have the physical response or the somatic response. Then we go from behavioral response or reaction. So we respond or react in the world. Now, the main difference, how we've differentiated reaction or response, is by reaction is something that we react upon based upon the past. So we react, it sits in the word. Yeah, so based on memories, the past. Response is more appropriate to the situation. Appropriate in the sense of it's more clear, it's more clean to the situation. So a big question you can ask yourself here is it a reaction or is it a response? Yeah? And just and a reaction is just very simply defined. It's just a pattern. It's a reaction. And it could be, again, it could be useful for you, but could also be not so useful for you. It doesn't really matter what it is at this stage, because we're just bringing self-awareness to the system now and to you. It's just, is it a reaction or is it a response? My reaction could also be when the body's a little bit tired, my reaction tends to be to go for a jog. It's really useful for my system, but it's a reaction. It's a habit. It's not something I necessarily always tune into in the moment. Is this really what the body is feeling in the moment? Which I'm aware of. And it's fine. It's working fine in life. The body is healthy, etc., etc. But it's really good to notice of oneself. Yeah. So there's no good, there's no bad, there's no way of doing it per se in that sense. It's just what's the awareness piece that's available here. And so from there, we then go into external reality again. So imagine that every human that you come across in the street, every person that you talk to in a work setting or in a business setting or at home has this going on for themselves. This whole shebang is happening very quickly all the time. And that's just, yeah, that's really fun and interesting to notice and observe. So have fun, have a play, and let us know if you have any other questions.